am so sad that nobody else on the planet got to watch Bwipo's reactions to Draco's summary of the game. Moonstone Crap got the biggest smile out of Bwipo ever. I do want to note the Kiopog winner. It was Mickey. He was playing that Brom. He got 55% of the vote. So congratulations to Mickey. Congratulations to G2. Now you're caught up. Bwipo, G2, they picked up the win. They ran Akali, Irelia in their solo lanes. It was interesting. It was fun to watch.
Throwback.
Definitely something to throw back. I'm done with G2. I'm bored of them. I want to turn to the victorious Bwipo. You won a game today. How did it feel? And how does it feel to cap the weekend that was not as happy as today was?
It felt pretty good for me because, I mean, the main reason why it felt extra good for me is because last night Hilly gave me some feedback and I was able to use it for today's games, and it felt much better playing the game as well as winning. I think that just the fact that it felt better to play was already a great start, and then the fact that we got a relatively clean win is something that felt really good.
When you look at the team in kind of a week like this, how is it bringing new players into Fnatic when you have this kind of pressure and fan expectations on your shoulder? Because this is something that you've obviously been very used to, that Hillsang's been used to, that Selfmade's been brought into, but for Upset and Niski, is this something that weighs more heavily on them as new players for the team? Do they take losses harder, or is it pretty easy right now in the early season to not take losses as a big deal?
I think the fact that most of the aggro in terms of fan expectations got moved to G2 with Reckless moving, I don't think it's been quite as hard or harsh on us. But all things considered, I would say that it's been pretty relaxed. I think most fans understand we had a slow start. We have news, like two of our biggest players, mid and AD, they were pretty defining for us in the past, moved out now, and they're very understanding of the growing pains that we're going through to make sure that we're a strong team.
I'm exceptionally happy to hear that. And I was personally nervous that the Fnatic fans would be more brutal. The Fnatic army are fanatics, you know, and they hold every single player to such a high standard. Earlier today on the analyst desk, Devisha and I were actually kind of comparing the expectations on Fnatic to, it's a football team, I'm saying like Barcelona or something, where basically they were so successful for so long that, you know, it's scary. How has it been for you personally? You know, how have you felt the change? Because now with these changes, you're now one of the veterans. You're now one of the faces of Fnatic. You know, does it weigh on your mind that you, or maybe Hilly, may be replacing Reckless when it comes to being the front man for Fnatic?
Obviously, it carries some weight, but at the same time, it does relax. It's a very relaxing environment for me at the same time, because I feel like the whole idea of like pure excellence and discipline and all these things that Fnatic used to be known for with Reckless is something that has slowly faded away when me and Hilly were introduced to the team. I think even back when Caps was playing, like these are all small steps to a Fnatic that's, I feel like we're more like a, I don't know, me and Hilly, like we're kind of just friends, you know, like we're relaxed, we enjoy playing the game, we have fun even when we lose. And I think that that's something that kind of changed the image of Fnatic at the same time, which is why I'm not surprised that people aren't super harsh on us, because I think that the whole idea of like, you try your hardest and you try to perform the best you can, but if you can't, then you enjoy the process of having tried. I think that idea is something that me and Hilly are bringing or have brought to this team, and I think that it's showing in our fans right now as well.
And that's really fantastic to hear. One, not only you be so aware of that, but also for it to be something that sounds just outwardly so very positive for the team environment as a whole. Because as long as we've looked at Fnatic and whatever iteration Fnatic has been, winning or losing, it's been like win or die. It's always what it's felt like from an outside perspective. So to hear that it's lightened up, to hear that there's less pressure on you now is really good. I do want to know, Week 1 spring, it's hard to take anything definitive from it for any team. But from your perspective in Fnatic, where are you guys in the project? Because you played 3 very different games. I think we've seen different styles. Is this a point in the project where you guys are trying to figure out how you want to play the game? Have you figured out how you like to play the game and you're just trying to execute on it? Where are you guys in this development process?
Speaking for the team is a little bit more difficult, but speaking for myself at least, situating myself in the team and how much space I can take. You have the whole wide Bwipo meme, but I take a lot of space in communication as well. And figuring out how much I can take without bothering other people is something that does require time for me. And especially on stage when things are a lot more tense, there's more on the line. It's not as easy for people to give that space, right? Like you need to feel comfortable with how much you're taking, how much you're giving, and finding how much Niski and Upset feel like taking is really important for me. Because if I'm like talking over them and denying them how they want to play the game and how they feel comfortable in the game, I think I would be a liability to this team. So from week one, I feel like I have a much better idea now how much I can take and how much giving is actually positive for the team.
When you look back, I wasn't able to hear team comms last year, but I do want to know, because Upset has always been considered a very vocal player. I'm not as sure about Niski, but when I look at personalities like Nemesis and Reckless, I would always assume that they took up less comm space, that they were more about playing for the team. So do you feel like during that time period on Fnatic that you got very comfortable being such a loud, such a kind of demanding voice because it's what the team needed to be successful?
So obviously in 2019 and 2020, that was it was a growing pain as well. I think that people remember the before Aatrox spring split and after Aatrox spring split. That's how I remember it for 2019. And yes, after Aatrox, I was a lot more vocal, and I think it's one of the reasons why it looked so good when I played that champion, because I was able to kind of set the tone for the fights, right? I could just call, here's what I want to fight. I'm going to go in. Let's just pile on and see what happens. But all things considered, I think they talk just as much, just in different timings. And I think that's what's important to realize is like, I don't think it's a measurement of like player A talks less than player B, and that's why he's better or worse. It's just, it's different. The communication is the same. It's just the way they put it, what feels good for them, what game states they want to be in are all different. And being able to cater to that and get them into the games that they enjoy playing is what's important.
And let's not kid ourselves, Bwipo. It doesn't matter whether it's before Aatrox, after Aatrox, before whatever. We know you're going to take up a lot of space in the room. It's one of the reasons we love speaking to you, and I'm so thankful you're joining us on PGL. Now, Dracos, you said something that I'm going to regret in a moment or two, because you said it's too early in the spring split to say anything definitively, right?
Yeah.
But Deficio and I took a shot. Okay, now, let's take a look at the state of our league after the opening week. What you're going to see on your screens in a moment or two is the standings. We have 2 teams tied at 3-0, then Misfits clearly in third at 2-1, and 7 teams at 1 win and 2 losses, right? This table's easy to understand. Week 1 has been a little bit chaotic, a little bit messy from some teams. I mean, I think Bwipo might be one of the first to kind of admit that point. Now, what Deficio and I did was we looked at these results and only taking into account the 3 games we saw on stage, we power ranked the LEC.
Always a good idea.
This is Deficio and Quickshot's power rankings after week 1. And very, very important to note, this is only for the 3 games we've seen on stage. This is disregarding what we know in scrims. This is disregarding what we expect to happen. And as you can see on your screen, we've got ourselves, G2 as well as Rogue sitting in S rank. In A, we've got ourselves Misfits, Vitality, Mad, Fnatic. We had sitting in B, and then everyone else in C. I want to go to Bwipo first. What's your gut reaction when you look at this power ranking, knowing the rules that we've laid out?
I mean, I don't think it's that unfair, honestly. Like, I think rating Fnatic as a B-tier team,
that is such
given
a
what we've
relief
shown,
for me.
it's fair. It's fair. I think that our last game we showed a lot more form and a lot more of what I think everybody expected from our team. Like, I think what I missed most in our first 2 games that I couldn't really find a way to participate in the game, except for the Gragas game where I was on the receiving end of a lot of attention, but I wasn't able to really be a part of what the team needed me to be. I wasn't there for a lot of important fights, and all things considered, I think B is a solid rating given the fact that we pretty much gave up most objectives or fought very poorly around the other ones. So other than game 3, I think that games 1 and 2 were really bad. I mean, games 1 and 2 were C, and game 3 I think was an A, so averaging out on like C+, in other words, a B. think that's fair.
I'm actually so relieved. I was terrified to do this with you because I hate doing these things. And the reason for it, the reason for it was that we basically figured that because of the fact that by Deficio in our rankings, the 3 teams that Fnatic had played were S or A tier. Winning 1, losing 2, we're like, okay, they've got to be below. Dragos, if you were to change something, would you have changed anything on those rankings?
Yeah, I'd make a D tier and I'd put Schalke and Astralis in it. Schalke and Astralis were a cut below the rest of the teams. Even Excel showed us something today against G2 that was really promising. But the thing that I noticed specifically from Astralis is that jungle support is not at all on the same page. You see constant fight forcing when the team doesn't seem like they know what to do, but they're picking different targets. They're going in at different times. And this is not something that, again, this is 1 week. But based on what I saw, both these teams, the Schalke Vitality game, I watched Gilius walk in, die by himself. I watched Abadage 5 seconds later do the exact same thing. The fact that they didn't lose in that instance in a very late game scenario is a miracle. Now, I think next week they could be A tier for all we know, because this week teams are learning the meta and they're learning how to play as a team. So there are so many freaking variables that can change week to week. But that said, both of those teams to me stuck out in a way that was not at all positive, and they feel behind the rest of the teams when it comes to figuring out both how to play the game as a team and what to pick on stage.
Now, Bwipo, what do you make of the overall quality that we've seen from the on-stage games? You've obviously got a bunch more scrims under your belt, and we've only seen 3 games apiece. Is it reflective of what you're seeing in scrims and what you've come to expect from the meta?
It's very much slower, of course. Stage scrims, it's always a different vibe. We're much slower. I think all teams are very much slower. I think we're the only, from what I could tell at least, we were a pretty fast team, but we were pretty fast at losing, so that's not much better. But all things considered, I think the meta slows down always. When you have an idea of how the meta is played, when you play on stage compared to on scrims, I think everybody collectively makes less risky decisions. Everything has to be kind of approved by the team, because it's a team game. And when you're on stage, it's much harder to be like, oh, I made a mistake, my bad. Compared to when you're in scrims, you make a small mistake. It's not a big deal. It's a practice match, right? But on stage, it weighs a lot more, and everyone feels that pressure more. And actually, curiously, I feel like the players that can go on stage and make those risky plays are usually the best ones.
When we look at kind of the weeks to come, I'm curious what your take is, because I think one of the big lessons that I think teams learned this week was that simple to execute compositions with simple ways to start fights are winning games right now, is what we saw. Usually just a team with a simpler composition with solid scaling, one out in the end. Do you expect that trend to stay as teams get more comfortable? Do you think that we'll kind of stray closer to an LPL, LCK meta where we maybe are more comfortable playing, I guess, what you would call global standard? Or do you think we're going to go further and further into the Ashe bot lane? And this is no flame to comp, it was a fantastic pick, but these kind of European specific picks that I think offer simpler tools to win the game.
Honestly, I think that simpler tools always come back in competitive League of Legends. Even when people collectively disagree to play them, all of a sudden one team's going to play them and everyone's like, why don't we do that? 2019 Worlds, great example. Everyone's popping out with Akali's and whatnot mid lane, and Doonby shows up and slams Nautilus, and everyone's like, wait a second, what? This guy just ulted me, what do I do? Alistar showing up for 2018 Worlds, Lissandra Galio showed up in 2018 Worlds when it was Aatrox, Akali, Irelia meta, all of a sudden, Lissandra shows up, and you're like, wait a second, what? So all things considered, I think these point and clickers, you could call them, they always have a place, and whether or not they can be played is the question, right? If you can't cheat playing these early games, or not necessarily early games, but these solid all-round champions that don't do anything special, is the question of whether you can do that. So for example, in the Ashe case, if you can lane with Ashe, I think it's a great pick, because you throw your arrow, you hit it, something good happens, you miss it, you wait till the next one. It's not that big of a deal.
I actually have an analogy that I was taught in my very first job at 17 years old, where I was overreaching, I was trying to do things way more complex than I needed to, and my boss pulled me aside and was like, why are you doing this? Kiss. And I said, what? And he said, kiss, K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. Now do your job.
Why is your entire career
And
defined by
listen, it
acronyms
stuck
related
with
to
me.
kiss
It
or
stuck
kissing?
with me. It stuck with me. So anyways, that was the advice that I took away from that. And simple things always come back. You heard it from Bwipo. Right, let's move on. Take a look at the key player of the game leaderboard. Larson is currently in first place, followed by VTO and then Patrick. If players are tied, whoever got the highest percentage of votes comes out on top. Razork, obviously, with his Olaf performance doing particularly well. Dracos, are you surprised by the names you're seeing?
No.
A lot of new faces after week one.
I mean, VTO and Razork both had fantastic performances this week. Armlet did as well. I mean, generally across the board, I think the struggle of the Kia player of the game leaderboard is that if your team has one insane carry and you win like 7 games and that guy gets MVP 7 in a row, you could be 10th at the end of the split and that guy will win Kia player of the game. And that's just kind of is what it is.
It's how it works. It's a fan vote. All right, let's take a look at next week's schedule. The LEC returns on Friday. Fnatic will be closing out the day along with Vitality. Bwipo, give me some expectations for that game.
It's going to be an interesting game. I mean, if we continue our form of the last game we played, going into this game against Vitality, I think we should have a pretty relaxed game. They don't seem to be a team that contests heavily, and they like to play it safe on the top side, at least from the champion picks I've seen. Nothing crazy. So perhaps I can find an opportunity there to get some spice going on for me.
I'm excited to put the phrase, if you can lane with Ashe, she's a good pick to the test. Like if Comp picks the Ashe and we finally get to see the Hylissang upset bot lane unleashed, because as much as I expected the Samira lane to like pop off and get super aggressive, I'd say it was overall like a pretty tame laning phase. So as someone who's watched Fnatic for many years, I would love to see more coin flip level 2 all in Hylissang. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, I would love to see that as well. I have one last thing that I want to ask you, Bwipo, and this is slightly risky on my part. During the course of Ready Check, we had an overreaction segment where we took overreactions from fans. One of those overreactions, which 55% of our viewers that voted in chat agreed with, was Fnatic will not make the spring playoffs. What do you say to that 55%?
I don't know. It's hard to say anything, isn't it? It's like, I don't know. I've never missed playoffs in my career, I think, right? I'm pretty sure I've played playoffs pretty much every... I think I missed finals once, so it would be a surprise if I missed it, if I missed playoffs for the first time. But I would say that, I don't know. I feel like you're overreacting for the sake of it.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. And the thing that I love is just how genuinely surprised and shocked you are at that statement. It hasn't even crossed your mind. Bwipo, thank you so much, dude. It is always a pleasure having you on the show. Congratulations on the win today. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
All right, the LEC Super Week is over. You can watch Evil Geniuses versus the Golden Guardians right now in the LCS, which, by the way, LCS music is better than LEC music. Sorry, Kevin. We'll be back next Friday for more League of Legends.
Pick band
We'll
game
see you
5.
then.